Things got a little blurry, Chris, on the video.
Oh,
Oh, they did. Yeah.
Ooh,
Oh, yeah.
that's too easy.
Oh, neat.
that's one of the new features.
We got a new camera in City Hall.
How's that?
Looks pretty good.
Are you ready to record, Mayor?
Okay, we were good to go.
It's already recording.
We're recording. All right, I'm gonna sit down.
And are we live? We are live. Okay, well, thank you all for being here. Welcome to the Philomath City Council meeting on June 13th of 2022. Today, we're first going to get started with a meeting of the Philomath Urban Renewal Agency. And we're going to have, well, first we'll get started with a roll call.
Jessica Andrade,
Present.
Catherine Bisco, here. Ruth Causey,
Here.
Matt Lehman,
Here.
Dave Lowe,
Here.
Teresa Nielsen,
Here.
and Chas Jones.
I am here. Thank you. And the only item on the agenda, or a couple items on the agenda, is one to have a public hearing regarding next year's budget, and then passing the consent agenda, and then public comments. So first, we are going to have the public hearing, and the topic is, well, Mike, did you want to go ahead and summarize this?
Yes, I can do that, Mr. Mayor. In front of the council, there will be a resolution to adopt the budget, make appropriations, and declare a tax increment for the URA. The Budget Committee made no changes to this, and so it started out at $3.2 million, and that's what the city will be adopting, or the urban renewal.
Excellent. Well, with that, I would entertain a motion. Councilor,
I move to adopt resolution number 22-01, a resolution adopting the budget for the fiscal year 2022-2023, making appropriations of $3,147,878 and declaring a levy of the maximum amount of taxes to fund said operations and debt.
great, thank you.
Very
Do we
good.
have-
We need to open and have the hearing and then close it first, and then go to the motion.
Okay, that's helpful. So we're gonna go ahead and drop that motion.
No second. So
It's table pending the hearing.
Thing we'll do is we'll open a public hearing, and Ruth Post, are there anyone scheduled to speak?
No, I did not have anyone sign up either in person or electronically to speak.
Okay. So close the public hearing. And with that, we would entertain a motion.
Renew your earlier motion.
I would like to renew my earlier motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
So we have a motion made by Councilor Causey, seconded by Councilor Nielsen. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Advance to nay. Looks like the motion carried unanimously. So thank you for that. We also have opportunity for public comment. Is there anyone signed up for public comment?
No, sir.
Okay. And then we have our consent agenda. And I would entertain a motion to carry the consent agenda. Councilor Causey.
Yes, I move to accept the consent agenda and the minutes of February 14th, 2022.
Great, thank you. Do I have a second? Motion made by Counselor Causey and seconded by Counselor Lehman. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. Aye. Aye. Any opposed? You're going to say nay. Looks like the motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. And with that, we will go ahead and adjourn the Urban Renewal Agency. But don't go anywhere, because we are now going to open the City Council regular meeting agenda. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started with a roll call.
Jessica Andrade,
Present.
Catherine Bisco,
Here.
Ruth Causey,
Here.
Matt Lehman.
Here.
David Lowe,
Here.
Teresa Nielsen,
Here.
Chaz Jones.
Here. Thank you very much. And my understanding is that we have Dennis Lewis with us today. Is that correct? Is he in person?
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. Well, Dennis, really want to appreciate you being here tonight, noting that I am in Anchorage and unable to be there in person. We really want to honor you and your 20 years of service, but we're going to have Councilor Causey, who is our council president, read your award and then present it to you in person.
Thank you.
Dennis, why don't you come over, stand by, Ruth, so we can make sure we capture you for the viewers at home. There we go.
Thank you. The City Council would like to present Dennis Lewis with this plaque to commemorate his serving the city of Philomath for 20 years. Dennis is a senior water, wastewater operator for the city. Dennis has twice been the recipient of the Oregon Water Treatment Plant Operator of the Year from the Oregon Association of Water Utilities. He works diligently to keep the plants operating at peak performance and is continually looking for ways to improve efficiency and effectiveness. Thank you, Dennis, for your years of service and dedication.
Well, thank you.
For 20 years of dedicated service, you make a difference to the community. You literally keep the water running.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Dennis.
Dennis, I wish I was there in person to shake your hand, but to be with the city for 20 years is quite an achievement. Appreciate all you've done for the city throughout your career, so thank you.
I'll just add, Mayor, that I think of all of the years, the most important years are the ones to come. With a new treatment plant coming on board, Dennis will be instrumental in getting our new plant up and operational and doing that conversion over. So 20 years behind you, but those next two are going to be super important.
Might be retiring just
Just after. Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you. So with that, we will go ahead and move to a couple of public hearings. We're going to have two public hearings. One is on proposed uses of the state shared revenue. And the second will be on the fiscal year 2022-2023 city budget. But first, we'll go ahead and get started with the public hearing on the proposed uses of state shared revenues. City Recorder, did we have anyone signed up to speak?
No, Your Honor, we do not.
You want to go to Mike on a summary for that there?
Let me do a quick summary.
Sure.
Okay. On the report I've given everybody, and I've got a spreadsheet that shows where we are, where the money's, how it's going to be calculated. We're going to have 105,000 for liquor tax, cigarette tax, 4,000, marijuana. We're projecting 7,000, then the highway gas 134,000, and that is going to be split between the streets and the roads and the bicycle paths and trails. So, and what we have to do here is do a public hearing. We've already done that. We're doing the final public hearing, and council will adopt the resolution saying that we would like to receive these monies and we'll receive it over the next year. And the motion is laid out there for you.
Okay, thank you. So with that, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing. My understanding is there's no one there present to speak. So we'll go ahead and we'll close the public hearing. Okay, so with that, we are not looking for a motion this evening on that topic, but we will go ahead and move to the next public hearing. Sorry. So
The resolution will come after. We'll do the public hearing first, then we'll do it all together.
that's right. So with that, we will next open up public, or we'll first have Mike present on the fiscal year 2022-23 city budget.
Okay, first thing that I'll present, Mr. Mayor, is imposing a category, categorizing the taxes for the fiscal year 2022. Our ad valorem tax is 5.3005. My report is missing the 0 per thousand of assessed value, but my resolution has the right amount on there. That is the taxes. I always do the taxes first, do revenues first, and then we do the expenditures and appropriations. So that's one motion. One resolution? Should I go to the next separate process?
Yes, please do.
Okay, and the final resolution that we have is for adopting the budget, the approved budget from the budget committee. They approved 35 million as budget appropriations with an ending fund balance of 3.8 for total requirements of 39,380,000. Council can make any adjustments upward of 5,000 or 10,000, which is ever is greater. If you want to decrease, you can do with that. There is no really ramifications as long as we stay budget.
Sorry, Mike, 5,000 or 5%?
5,000 or 10%, whatever is greatest. Any decrease, all you have to do is keep your budget balanced. And that is pretty much it on my report. The motions are laid out in my report. I'll turn it back over to the council.
Okay, so with that, we will open the public hearing. And City Recorder, is there anyone there that is waiting or interested in speaking?
No, Your Honor, there is not.
Okay,
Someone has there.
so we will go ahead and close the public hearing. And thank you for that. Next, we have public comments. Is there anyone present who would wish to give public comment?
Yeah, I think each of those three resolutions, we can take individual motions and votes on each of those three separate resolutions.
Do you want to do that right now?
Yep, now the public hearing is closed. Let's go ahead and do those now.
Okay. Got it. Okay, so first of all, sorry about the public comment. Looking at the proposed use of state shared revenues, I entertain a motion. Councilor Quasi.
I move to adopt resolution 22-05, a resolution declaring the city's election to receive state shared revenues pursuant to ORS 221.770 for fiscal year 2022-2023.
Second. We have a motion made by Councilor Quasi, seconded by Councilor Lowe. Any further discussion? Councilor Lowe.
Just a curiosity question. Would there be any situation that a municipality would refuse this? I mean, it seems sort of automatic. So is there a reason why there has to be?
The state law requires it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
You could, silence means you're not going to accept it.
Right.
Really? Okay, thank you.
It is an opportunity for the public to come and provide testimony and argument that we think our taxes are too high and we think you should lower our taxes. So there is always that opportunity, but typically that maximum tax rate is lower than what most cities wish it was, and so
This
they
is the
typically go
revenue
to the
sharing
high.
one.
Revenue share.
Revenue share.
Well, revenue sharing, right, so sorry.
Yeah.
So that revenue share, yeah,
Yeah,
similar.
Thanks.
So with that, seeing no further discussion, favor passing the resolution as passed the motion as stated, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, raise your hand and say nay. Seeing none, motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Next, we have a resolution 2206. Now I would welcome a motion. Councilor Causey.
I moved
You
to,
won't-
I'm sorry.
Everybody is too slow.
I move to adopt resolution number 22-06, a resolution imposing and categorizing ad valorem taxes for the city of Philomath for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2022 and ending June 30, 2023 at a rate of $5.3005 per $1,000 of assessed valuation.
I'll second that.
So we have a motion made by Councilor Causey and seconded by Councilor Nielsen. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Looks like the motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. And next we have a resolution 22-07. And again, I would entertain a motion. I could have sworn Matt almost twitched his nose, but Councilor Causey?
I move to adopt resolution number 2207, a resolution adopting fiscal year 2022-2023 budget as recommended by the Budget Committee for budget appropriations of $35,570,784 and total ending fund balances of $3,809,251 for total requirements of $39,380,035.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Or low? Okay, so we have a motion made by Councilor Causey and seconded by Councilor Lowe. Councilor Causey?
I just wanted to clarify with respect to the city council's flexibility to increase expenditures in any fund of up to $5,000 or 10%. Is that a specific expenditure, the total in the fund?
No, it's the total of the fund. So the fund or the whole funds, all the funds together. It's kind of confusing, but
It's
if you look at
fund.
one fund, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none, all in favor of passing the motion as stated, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
The motion carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Chris, you can't vote.
That wasn't a vote, no comment. I just want to acknowledge we've got several members of the Budget Committee here with us tonight. I just want to, again, thank you for your efforts. Thank you for your work on this budget season. I really appreciate the concerted continual effort to put money aside for future expenses and our equipment schedules, our building schedules, putting money towards these big projects, having the contingencies there in case we get into some trouble. Overall, I felt like the budget process was really well received, and I thought there was good input, multiple pages of questions and feedback. So I thought that dialogue was really good and helpful. And again, I also want to appreciate staff, Mike, coming in and taking this budget on. It'll look a little bit different next year, I'm sure, but appreciate Mike and his diligence, my department heads and staff that have worked on pulling this together as well. Overall, just couldn't be happier with our budget season and our budget approval process we went through this year. Always room for improvements, and we see some of those, but overall, really happy with how things went. So thank you again, everybody, for getting the budget passed, and congratulations to the City of Philomath for getting our budget passed.
You're done. We can now file in everything. We're good to go.
Excellent. Thank you. And thank the budget committee for stepping up and helping and volunteering for the city and Chris Costello for helping lead those conversations. Really appreciate your time helping us. Excellent. Are there any?
Thanks.
City recorder. Now we're going to go ahead and move on to public comments. Is there anyone who could offer public comment?
No, Your Honor, there is no one signed up for public comments.
Anyone want to stand up anyway?
I think there's coming in.
With that, we'll go ahead and move on to the consent agenda. And I'd welcome anyone who has any concerns about the consent agenda or welcome a motion to.
I just want to make one note. There is a correction. I've got City Attorney Jim Brewer absent twice.
I was very
You
absent.
know, Not once, but twice.
Shows your importance.
He's not gone often, but when he is, he's really gone.
Councilor Andrade, you have your hand up.
Yeah, it might be, I'm not entirely sure if I remember correctly, but I thought that we had voted to amend the the ordinance so that we took out the emergency clause. Is that correct, or did we only just talk about wanting to remove it at some point?
Chris, do you want to, or city recorder?
During the discussion,
Jessica, which line number are you actually referring to right now?
So it would be for it would be section E1, and it just has a roll call vote, ordinance vote, non-unanimous decision, how it's going to come back to this meeting for us to vote. But I know that we spoke about not wanting the emergency clause included, and that was line 2 of page 41. It's mentioned there, but I thought we actually formally made a motion to remove it, but I haven't been able to check that.
I'd be happy to go back and double check that.
Yeah.
Okay,
Counselor,
thank you.
I think Councilor Lehman, I think you were the no vote on that. Was that why you voted no? Was it because of the emergency clause, or was it removed and you voted no?
It was, I voted no because I disagree with the policy in general terms, but I vehemently opposed to using the emergency clause willy-nilly.
Okay, but you're.
And
okay.
I don't like the emergency clause either, and don't think I would have voted yes for it if we had it in there,
Okay, sounds like we
unless
need
I'm
to
mistaken.
double check. Okay, we'll go back and double check.
I would say that for tonight, if we don't have an answer on that, you can amend the ordinance at any time, so that it would still be appropriate to raise that, and it could still be removed.
Thank you.
Can we go ahead and just pull the consent agenda and look at this time? Because we had some uncertainty. Okay, so I'm going to go.
Well, I guess my big, sorry, Mary Jones. I guess my bigger concern is on the agenda for later tonight. And so it would be good before we took a vote on that to know whether the emergency clause was removed or not, so we can make a second reading, an accurate second reading tonight. This may be one where we can table this and maybe have a recess at 8 o'clock, double check it and come back after the recess.
That would be fine. City recorder, would that be something that we could do? Reasonable period of time?
Yes.
Okay.
Let's just table the consent.
We'll table the agenda for now. And we will move to the first item of unfinished business, the social service funding policy and utility assistance program. And my understanding is, for Lowe, you're going to take the lead on this?
Yes. So in our packet, we have the funding policy, and as it was visioned and then marked up. But just 3 highlights I'd like to make in addition to what's written here. First of all, I want to acknowledge and appreciate the involvement of the Inclusivity Committee in providing their input into the creation of this document, and particularly the commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's, I know, something that has been the forefront of this session, and I'm glad that we're seeing it go through the various documents that we have in our policies. So I appreciate that. Also letting you know, there's a formatting change that we did to more or less to emphasize those important points. So we didn't really reduce anything, but we wanted to highlight. So for instance, providing basic services and resources for underserved populations, combating homelessness and housing insecurity, improving health and wellness, including mental health. We wanted to make sure those were really brought out. And then also to make it clear that recipients of funding should be able to demonstrate or incorporate that they have practices on their organizations of equity, inclusion, and diversity, as well as being responsible stewards of the environment. And then finally, we did add, because this wasn't part of the prior policy, but it's still something we've been doing, is talking about the utility assistance program, which is sort of separate from this use of the 35% of revenue. So we've incorporated that. And as a reminder, what that does, it helps folks that are financially having difficulty paying their utility bills. And the city has found that working with Vina Moses and We Care, those are 2 agencies specifically that help folks with utility bills. So it helps the city in terms of being able to receive the money that we get, but it also helps the person that has trouble paying to go through an agency that helps. We named those 2 agencies, but it doesn't preclude that some other agency might also offer a similar service, in which case we would add it to the policy. So that's my description of that.
Thank you. We have a suggested motion.
I move to approve the social service funding policy and utility assistance program changes as presented.
Thank you. Councilor Lane, seconded. Councilor Causey made the initial motion. So with that, is there any further discussion?
I'll just add one comment, Mayor Jones. On the utility assistance program, that Councilor Lowe suggested we added in there. The 0.25%, that's based on historic value. I went back 8 years and looked at how much money the city has put towards that utility assistance and compare that to our revenue coming in off of property tax, or excuse me, off of revenue from water and sewer revenue combined, because that's where that money comes out of, is from the water fund and the sewer fund. And it was, I mean, right there at the median and the mean were right there at that 0.25%. So I feel very comfortable with that number. If we want to go off what we have historically provided, it's that 0.25%. I don't know that I've seen that written out anywhere, and maybe that was the number we just kind of did, but I don't think that's right, because it looks like it was like, I forget the exact numbers. It was like $3,000, $3,000, then 1 year it just bumped up to $3,500. And we did that for a couple years, and it bumped up to 4. And so it's kind of gone up in tier steps. It's not been like an actual percentage, but I think having that percentage will help us stay on track as our revenue, you know, as we get more customers and our revenues increase, we'll continue to provide that additional assistance. So that's where that number came from. We didn't talk about the finance admin committee meeting because I haven't done the analysis yet. So I just wanted to share that's where that number came from.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously, so thank you very much for that. Next, we have a discussion on the transient lodging tax policy and grant funding. And Councilor Lowe, my understanding is you're going to take the lead on that one too.
Sure. So again, in our packet, we have a description, agenda item summary of what this is about. Prior council approved the TLT program in 2021, and Finance and Administration Committee reviewed the proposal at our meeting on whenever we had our last meeting, which wasn't too long ago. But there are two aspects to this. One is we do receive $5,000 from the county, just as without anything we have to do on particular. It's meant we can use it for any way we want, but we're really wanting to use it just for tourism development and not for another purpose. And then the second part, we talked about this taxation. The city based 9% transient lodging tax, which we'd approved. The Department of Revenue, Oregon Department of Revenue, has reviewed this, and there's a slight amendment that they want to make, and that's incorporated in the resolution. So we're really at the stage now where the council is reviewing and approving the policy that follows. And this policy also establishes a grant program. So it's explained within the document, but 50% of the revenue that's received would be used to help 50% the city would use for tourism related activities, promote them, and another 50% could be allocated as a grant for to promote tourism within the community that's not specifically directed by the city. So that is what I have to report there. And if there are other questions, happy to entertain them, or we have a resolution, a recommendation.
Yeah. We have a recommendation. Councilor Kazi.
I move to approve the transient lodging tax policy and grant program as presented.
Okay, so we have a motion made by Councilor Kazi, seconded by Councilor Nielsen. Any further discussion?
Just prior to the vote, real quick, the ordinance, as mentioned, will be considered at your next meeting. We didn't get that pulled together and get notice to the public prior to tonight's meeting, so I wanted to provide to you in draft form. City Attorney and I were just talking, there's a couple little tweaks in here that we'll make before you get the final one, but we wanted to at least see draft what type of correction Department of Revenue is asking for. It's just that definition of finance director or their designee, right? So we'll bring that back to you at your next meeting for consideration and vote on that ordinance, not tonight.
So the idea is that we will approve the policy, then we'll develop an ordinance, and that'll be presented next time. We'll have that public hearing on that, and then we can have a reading.
Wouldn't be a public hearing, but opportunity to comment at least.
Okay. Seeing no comment, all in favor of passing the resolution, the motion as stated, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. And next on our unfinished business is a conversation on the downtown sidewalk inlay design. And Chelsea, are you going to walk us through this process?
Chris, you want to bring it to your
Sorry.
Okay. There.
Christopher, you take my spot.
Okay. Thanks, Chris.
This is where the Christmas.
Swapping my Christmas.
And when you get started, could you just let me know who joined you at the table, Chelsea?
Yes, I will.
So we are talking about the sidewalk inlays, the metal sidewalk inlays for the downtown streetscape project, which the Public Art Design Committee has been working on for, well, really since October. Lots of work on this. So we have Ruth Causey, who is on that committee, Christopher McMorrin, who's the chair of the committee, and then we're joined by Andrea, last name
Mark.
Thank you, and Deanne Garcia, who are the artists that we've been working with on the committee. So they are going to show us the designs that the art committee approved at their last meeting, and we're looking for an approval from you as a council to move forward with getting these designs manufactured. So I'm going to let them do a little bit of a visual presentation here for everyone.
The screen sharing is disabled.
Oh.
Ruth, can you go ahead and make her
Co-host her? Yeah.
co-host?
Thank you. Ruth has a lot going on over there, the technical side.
Right. All right. So as Chelsea said, I'm Deanne. This is my partner, Andrea, and we are going to show you a little bit about the background on the project and then our final designs. So as we kicked off the project, we were asked to create 5 different designs on a single theme to create, we'll be producing up to 2 of each of the designs. So we needed all 5 to kind of marry together well. They'll be placed on sidewalk corners so that you would only see one at a time, but we want them to feel like they're part of one big family. And we were asked to showcase especially the flora and fauna of the Philomath area. So we did a little research and found that there's actually 5 distinct biomes in this region, which was very convenient. And so we decided we would create one with each biome in mind. So we did a meadows and grasslands, such as you would see at the top of Mary's Peak with wildflowers and grasses. We looked at mixed conifer forests, fir, hemlock, and spruce, and part of the timber economy here. The oak woodlands, which is a real focus of restoration in this area. Riparian zone, since Mary's River flows right on the edge of town. And the wetlands, like at Finley Wildlife Refuge and other places. So this was the direction that we showed way back in, I think it was March 9th. We showed a couple of visual directions, and this is the one that the committee chose. And some of the strengths to this one were, we're using icons to represent different species in each biome. And we were looking for ways to increase engagement so that as people found them, the abstract nature of them would cause people to kind of engage a little bit extra to sort of interpret them in their own minds and to hint at what the species are without hitting people over the head with it. And so this was our jumping off point. So we'll show you now where it went to from there. Oh, it's half covered.
Yeah. And I will talk about the 5 designs. The first one is the mixed conifer forests. And again, this is after several iterations. We've come to this refinement of this, characterized by the Doug firs, stands of noble, spruce, and hemlock, which, well, conifer forests are diverse forests, have been the backbone of industry in the region. So the key features of this is the Doug fir, short-eared owl, calypso lily, pine cones, mushrooms. And the composition lends itself really to enter it from any direction, as this will be inlaid into the sidewalk, cast in bronze. If somebody's coming from any direction, they can approach it, they can look and try to figure out what the different icons represent. The next one is meadows and grasslands, most noted at the summit of Mary's Peak. The key features here, the Fender's blue butterfly, wild strawberries, the tiger lily, the red-winged blackbirds, the lupins, and then we've pulled out some elements throughout it just for visual interest. And around the edge, each one has Philomath, Oregon, the name of the biome, and then we've got Kalapuya Meadows as well. We say it, not just meadows, but Kalapuya Meadows, as they were here initially. And they named, prior to Mary's Peak was called Champanefu. So we put that on there too, on all of them. And we consulted with Dr. David Lewis from OSU on appropriate names and appropriate symbols and things. And so we have been in dialogue on this. The oak woodlands, native to the drier south-facing slopes of the coastal foothills, oak woodlands have become a focus of restoration efforts in the Philomath area. So we've got Oregon white oak acorns, the white-tailed deer, the woodpecker, acorn woodpecker, the great horned owl, and feathers and leaves. And the fourth one we have is the riparian, focusing on Mary's River, which flows along the south side of town before spilling into the Willamette River. And rivers help power early lumber mills and have provided transportation and recreation. So we've got the red band trout, beaver, pond turtle, the cattails, tree frogs, and marsh grasses. And the final one is the wetlands. And while the fields of the valley often flood periodically in all areas of the valley, the Finley Wildlife Refuge offers year-round marshland habitat for migratory birds. So we've got the Canada geese, great blue heron, camas lily, bluebirds, and marsh grasses. So these will be cast in bronze. And so looking at them like this is not actually how they'll look. This is a creation we've created in a 3D modeling program on the left of how they'll be cast. And on the edge, we talked about burnishing the name so it stands out with the line and keeping the rest. It would be more subtle, actually, more like the design in the upper right, which is just a design that we found where even though those are depressed and ours are going to be coming up to the level, it'll be, the symbols will be, subtle enough, yet people will be able to look and be intrigued by what is in there and what they mean. And perhaps, kids will come up to it and, have a game with it, but they're, looking at what's there, or, potential, rubbings with crayons or things. I mean, with paper and crayons and things.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. So,
I'm ready.
yeah, so they will all be cast and inlaid into the sidewalk. And we can leave it on this, and that's our presentation.
Thank you very much.
And so a couple things, I'll let Christopher chime in too if he has anything to say about it, but a couple things about how the committee got here. They explored all of the options. Do we want to do important people in the area? Do you want to do important places in the area? Some of what they settled on was that there's already some representation for those subjects here, and that they wanted to do something that was a little bit different. And the Timber Town theme is actually how they got here, is expanding on that. If you're going out in the area, what is here and what has been here for a long time and what will be here for a long time, because these are going to be in the sidewalk for a very long time. So Christopher or Ruth, did you have anything you'd like to share about this in your process?
I think the only thing I would add is that it was a pleasure working with the committee and with our designers as well. We had a lot of fun in that process. And the focus on the icons and on these various biomes adds an element of permanence that we felt was appropriate, which Chelsea alluded to, but something that was more permanent than a celebration that we might have every year, even if it's been going on a very long time. So I think we're very proud of what we came up with, and I hope the council likes it as well.
Yeah, I think thank you both, and you as well. That was excellent. I think I would echo everything Chelsea said, that the committee really talked through like a million different options. We talked through, you know, we want to put the frolic, put the museum, but we wanted to really do something that would be more of like a value add. Everyone already knows the frolic, everyone already knows the museum. How can we kind of add something new to the community? And then I think the other thing that, at least it was new for me in this process, you know, I've done a lot of sort of artistic things in the past, but thinking about this not just as like a pretty thing to look at, but part of what will be our city infrastructure is really important. So it's not just like something that should be, you know, up on a wall in a museum. This is something that people are going to be walking on. As you were talking about, they're going to be approaching it from any direction. We want them to be able to, you know, stare at it for a minute and keep finding new things. So it's not just like a picture of an owl that looks really pretty. We wanted it to have a little more sort of uniqueness and depth to it. So I just think it's important to think about that, because they do look a little different than just like, you know, a nice picture of a tree. And that was very intentional. We wanted it to feel more like it's part of the infrastructure of the city, and to feel like it had more than just sort of, you know, a frame on a wall. But that's one thing I would add. I spurred more things, so okay.
Part of the engagement that was talked about quite a bit too is that there will be the kiosk downtown, which provides opportunity to share information with people. And so the committee would really like to have a brochure information so that you can see what the species are that you're finding out there, which will also be an engaging activity. We hope to have something, go find the inlay with this on it, you know, that for anyone who's visiting, people who live here, school groups. And so that was also part of what the committee talked about, is making sure that we share that information with others.
And that was one thing I forgot in my.
That's what I was doing.
Okay.
I want to say one thing. As an educator, I think the realm of what this can be developed into educationally for our schools here, and being as it's downtown, close walking distance and interactive, I think it's quite engaging and really quite fascinating. I really applaud you. This is, I think it has limitless potential and how it can be utilized. So good job.
Yeah, thank you. And I see that I have one question, but I also just wanted to thank everyone for participating and helping pull these together. Ms. Marks, Ms. Garcia, Councilor Kazi, and Chris, and Chelsea as well. Like, it just is a great product, and I'm really proud of what you. So, I did have a question. What's the size? What's the diameter of these things?
Yeah, so they're 24 inches in diameter. So they're good size. You're going to see, we did have full size printouts for our last draft, for just before the final, almost final draft, so that everyone in the committee could stand over them and look at them. And it's pretty impressive when you see them to that large scale.
And I think, just as a refresher, they'll be mostly on corners. So you really will be approaching them from all angles. They won't just be in the middle of the sidewalk where you're only going two directions. They'll be sort of on the street corners. So you'll be crossing the street, going around. So just to remind everyone of where they'll be placed. But yeah.
And 24 inches is basically a manhole cover size, or pretty similar.
Similar. Mm-hmm.
Great. And yeah, so thanks to the committee. Really appreciate the work. And I said, Councilor Lehman.
Yeah, I also want to say that I think they look great, and I'm super impressed with them. I just had one question, and that's about the white-tailed deer. I'm wondering where that came from, because there are tons of deer around here, and almost all of them have black tails. And just wondering why a white-tail was chosen.
That'd be a typo.
Yeah. It's actually a black-tailed deer.
Oh.
We'll make sure that the brochure notes that.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you.
And Councilor.
Yeah, I think another really neat thing out of this is that it makes a statement of our values for the community. That's about the environment, by not focusing on buildings or people and that kind of thing, making a really good statement about our environment. And, you know, that's kind of picked up in that social agency thing we talked about, conservation, good stewards of the environment. So this is really ties in with that. So I guess that was a conscious decision, but it's great. Great, thank you.
I'm glad it comes through.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts, comments? We do have a recommended motion.
I move that the city council approve the sidewalk inlay designs as presented.
And I'll second that.
Have a motion made by Councilor Causey, seconded by Councilor Nielsen. Any further discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. And motion carries unanimously. Congratulations to the Public Art Committee.
Everybody.
Thank you.
And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be back with more in the future.
All right.
Okay, so
Little shuffling.
we'll go ahead and go through this next agenda item, and then we'll take a little bit of a break so that we can address the consent agenda. But first of all, we have a conversation led by Chelsea on the Veterans Memorial Sculpture design.
Okay, so into another art piece. Here we go. Keep my art pieces straight. So this one is for the Paul J. Cochran Veterans Memorial Park. We received the grant from OPRD for $50,500 of the 20%, 40% match requirement. And what we're looking at for the grant are specifically the memorial, the flagpole behind the memorial, the excavation and area directly around the memorial. So we have a deadline of about May 1st, 2023, that we need to have all of that completed and our invoices turned in. And so we are looking to get approval for a general concept design. This is not a firm concept design. We need the approval from council to move forward with this general idea that the park committee has vetted and approved for recommendation to you. When I wrote the staff report, I hadn't quite had the park meeting. And so their feedback was that they really liked the granite pillars that are shown. And they really like the eagle. They're not all sure about the nest under the eagle or if it's necessary. And so the way that we got to this design is that there were two ideas that were the most popular floating around. One was the eagle in the nest on a large spire, and the other was a granite structure that it looked really similar to what Corvallis has actually. And so in talking with the family, they were split too. Some of them liked the eagle, some of them liked the granite. And so staff and some of the volunteers have been working on the project said, what about combining them to make something unique that brings together both of the ideas? What's not shown on here is the seals, the military seals, which the thought is that we would put those on the granite structure and a plaque at either the top or the bottom of the center structure. And so what I'm looking for tonight is just approval to move ahead with this idea. We're going to have to get several artists here, the artist to do the eagle and an artist to do the granite. And so we want to try to get going with getting them working together and figuring out how to make something like this.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that. Yeah, I have a recommended motion and we have a discussion. Councilor Coffey, you win.
I move that city council approve the general concept design for the memorial structure and spending $50,500 of grant eligible funds and $20,200 budgeted park project funds for the Paul J. Cochran Memorial Park project.
And I'll second.
We have a motion made by Councilor Causey and seconded by Councilor Nielsen. Any further questions or comments or staff? I have a question. So is this coming out of the next year's budget or is that this year's budget?
It will not be out of this fiscal year. It'll be next fiscal year after July. I'll be starting to reach out for the procurement process. Hopefully, if this is approved this meeting, we'll be starting to see what we need to do to get, quotes on these unique pieces. So we'll start that process, but we won't be spending anything until next fiscal year.
Okay. Councilor Causey, you had a question, comment?
Yes, I just wanted to, I don't know if this came up during your discussions, but on the Willamette University campus, there is a fountain and 2 eagle sculptures with nests. And they're absolutely stunning. I'm sure Councilor Brewer has seen them.
That's a lie.
Okay.
I would
Students
refer
call
you.
them chickens.
I have a daughter who went to 11. It's the chicken.
The chicken. Okay.
They don't look.
It is
like
beautiful.
They look like
No.
Councilor?
It is beautiful.
Yeah, so just in terms of the cost of it, and I realize you have to get bids and so on, are pretty comfortable that this 40% match and the grant will be sufficient to cover the projected costs?
Yes, so I did get a very rough estimate because again, we don't have a lot of this done for the
Right.
granite portion, which was estimated to be $15,000 to $20,000 without the installation work. The larger sculpture for the eagle, which was more substantial and included the pedestal, all of the concrete work, all of that was, I believe, 30,000. And so that should come down quite a bit because it's going to be a little bit smaller scale. The park's not a very large park, so we want to make sure that we do something that's appropriately scaled. And so between the two, yes, and the flagpole installation, that's expected to all be covered out of that.
So another follow-up question. So then if it comes in less, and we're doing a match, how is that money allocated? Does the grant go down proportionally and our match goes down proportionally, or?
If we don't intend to spend all of it, yes, that's pretty much the way that it works. But because they're very particular about it needs to be the memorial, not the rest of the park and other features. We do have quite a bit of work around the memorial, so I have no doubt that we'll be able to spend all of that money, even if it's just included on the sidewalks that are leading up to the memorial or benches that are right there viewing the memorial. So we have other costs that we've put into the rest of the park, but are still really associated with the memorial.
Thanks.
Then I have a quick question. Oh, actually, first, Councilor Andrade, you go ahead.
Thank you. Chelsea, it sounded like you spoke with the Cochran family. Was that correct?
Yes, so the volunteer, Eric Neiman, who's been working with me on this project, has spoken with several of the family members about their preferences. And so some of them liked the eagle. They weren't 100% sold on the eagle as it sat originally. They liked the idea of the granite, of having some seals or plaques and the granite as well. But they liked the eagle. Some of them just really liked the granite. So it seemed like a way to kind of honor them and bring that together, as well as some of the other veterans that have been involved in the project and the preliminary design.
That was actually going to be my follow-up question regarding reaching out to other veterans in the community and how we haven't really heard anything about this park at the council level. And so just, I personally want to make sure that the veterans in our community are given the opportunity to, have their input on this park. And I guess, has that been able to happen? And if we could get an update at some point in time about like what things are settled and what things aren't, that would be greatly appreciated, because I know there have been a lot of concepts that have kind of been thrown out there. And I'm just a bit confused as to where we are on this.
I can give just a really brief update on that. So we are working with a firm to do a concept, a visual concept. And so based off of the ideas that have come in. The neighborhood was surveyed before I was here, surveyed the neighborhood. I know that there have been local veterans that have been involved. Eric Neiman has been reaching out to them and having those conversations with them in these concept designs. And so we are trying to get a visual now that we'll present to council as soon as we get more of a visual on the features, what the neighborhood asked for. All of that has been brought into that design.
Have there been like community, like city sponsored, like, hey, do you want to help with this? Because it feels odd that it would be just kind of one community member reaching out to people who are vets. I want to make sure we don't exclude anyone. I know that I met Councilor Bisco and myself were at the farmers market last Sunday, and we met a veteran who didn't know about this and was really interested. So I guess, is there a way that we can be more public about reaching out to people who are interested in participating?
Sure, there are going to be a lot of opportunities for participation. There are a number of organizations, some of them veterans organizations. Veterans organizations have been involved actually since the very beginning, before the house came down. We have letters of support from all of the local veterans organizations. They're all aware of it, the organizations in this area. So it's not unknown to them. I don't know how they share their information, but we have reached out to them all and have letters of support from, I think, every organization that's in the Philomath area. And so we will have a lot of opportunities coming up for people to really get involved with the project. There's going to be a pavilion that the Timber Framers Guild is donating materials and engineering for. That's going to be a project. There's going to be some play equipment. So I'm sure that we're going to have, some of that installed. Yeah, and that was from reaching out to the community survey that was done. People wanted a multi-use park. Now we're trying to get a concept design that can make those two things happen on the same property with some separation. Yeah.
Well, thank you for that information. I feel a bit weird about having playground equipment only because it's a memorial, but I guess that'll come later, that conversation. Thank you for the update.
Sure.
Thank you. And then the only thing I was wondering about was, are the columns, your granite columns, kind of a specific thing, or basalt columns, those nice hexagonal columns, were they considered, or is that just not going to happen? Like,
I don't know that we're completely set on what type the stone is, and there is still some opportunity for the shape of it. This is a kind of a general concept. It would probably be nice to reach out to the stoneworkers and ask them what they suggest. We have some locally. There's another really well-known one in Oregon that does a lot of these types of memorials. So they will know also what else there is in Oregon. I think part of it is to try to get something that's a little bit unique, even though it's not going to be huge. It would be nice if it's unique and it doesn't just look like every memorial that's surrounding or any of the memorials that are directly surrounding Philomath.
thank you. Any further questions, comments? Councilor Bisco.
Yeah, I wonder if we could get a bigger picture. I know we had a certain set of dollars set aside for this project. It sounds like, if I heard you right, that we're looking at expenditures going into next year's budget cycle. Where are we at with what we expected to spend and what we might now be proposing? So we're talking about concept drawings, which may or may not be, a consultant or some other contract. Do you have an estimate of what dollars above what we've already budgeted this might be?
I don't remember exactly what we put in for next fiscal year. Do you remember that number off the top of your head?
Pulling it up right
Okay.
now. The focus right now is on the memorial aspect of this. So we've got this grant that's kind of hanging over us that we want to fulfill and get this part done, get that completed. as Chelsea mentioned, we've got a really good contact with the Timbers Guild, Timber Framers Guild. So they're looking at the pavilion aspect of it. We're looking at playground. So it's going to come in, and right now it's coming in a little bit of pieces. Chelsea's focus right now is let's get this going because we know we've got a long road ahead of us to get this done. As we all know, sculptors and artists like to take their time and they don't want to be pressured, which is great. Want to give them time. So we're trying to get this done, but we will be coming back to the first of the Park Advisory Board and then to the City Council on kind of final design. We're doing some initial outreach right now, we meaning Chelsea, on some project managers that can oversee this, because a large part of this program and project, I'll be candid, the city has park SDCs. We could go out and build this park tomorrow. But I think that takes something away from the community and what we're wanting to do with this park, which is to allow for specifically veterans organizations and veterans to be a part of building this memorial. And so a lot of this project is focused on small pieces, getting an overall project manager to oversee these different groups and different volunteers and different programs. And just knowing that it's not going to be a 2-month build. This may be a 6-month or an 8-month or a 12-month build with small pieces, smaller projects, getting various groups to come in and be a part of it. That takes a special project manager that's willing to take that time in there. We have several we've been talking to that are very interested in this project and donating that time or doing that at cost. But we're just working through those details still. So I don't want to say we'll tell you more later, but a lot more details will come out this park. We're really just trying to get this part of it done so we can get our artists going on what's going to be the focal point here. And then we will be coming back to you and to the park board with a final design. We need to get it engineered. We need to get, it laid out correctly. We need to get it bid, get a contractor on board. So we are at the beginning start parts of this, but this $70,000 for this aspect of it, I think is appropriate. We've got the funds there to do it, and we don't want to lose these grant funds.
So just to be clear, that didn't super answer my question. It did provide some context, and I know about some of the community groups and the Timber Framers Guild, got to meet with some of those folks, but I think we had $200,000 allocated for this project. If we go over that budget, correct me if I'm wrong, but that was my recollection. If we exceed that budget extensively, that's going to impact other park projects. Primarily, the up and coming one is the skate park. And knowing that we have tabled that project, at least that's the narrative, in order to move this project forward, I'm concerned that we have a lot of not real solid idea of what the cost could actually be. When you start talking about project managers, even at cost, when we start talking about concept drawing and consultants, materials, just in general, I'm concerned a little bit about where are we at potentially with that budget, because it sounds like we're outside potentially of that initial expectation, especially when we're already talking about next year's budget cycle as well.
So I will say that we have an immense amount of donations already, which is, it's significant. We have Knife River donating concrete. We have builders, like Chris had said, that are willing to donate tens of thousands of dollars to the project. So there already are a lot of donations. We have a scout group that wants to build and provide materials for some of the garden beds.
We had, I'm looking at the CIP that just got approved for 22-23. We identified $248,100 of park SDCs to go towards this park. So that's in addition to the $50,500 grant that we got. So I'm pretty comfortable going forward. I don't think we'll be taking any money away from the skate park.
Yeah, and the skate park, just, not to get into that, but it's not on hold. We've actually applied for a grant, for a planning grant.
I understand.
And are waiting to hear back for that. So it is also progressing. We're just in a holding pattern, waiting to hear back from the grant.
Thank you, Justin.
Yeah.
So would it be possible to get some sort of summary of what those donations and in-kind contributions are for this project?
Well, once we bring this back to you, that will all be laid out. At this point, what we need to do is we have to get some art. We have to start talking to artists. It's not breaking ground yet. It's not installing it yet, but we do have to start talking to the artists. The one artist in particular has asked for a year. We're already under a year. The size of the sculpture has come down some, so I'm hoping that by the time we get all of our documents out and go through the procurement process, that we'll still have time to work with that artist, because they have also offered to donate some time and materials to the project, so.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments? Seeing none, all in favor of passing the motion as stated, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. With that, let's go ahead and take a 5-minute break, and we'll go ahead and come back at 8:17.
So. This is probably 15 feet up. But it's really
Hello, everyone. Hello.
How do you think?
That was my space.
No, that was not bad. It'd just be something pretty to look at, just as you want to it, right, right.
Let's see.
Hello, everyone. Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started. And if we go back to the consent agenda, do we have the ability to address the question that we had there?
Yes, I pulled up the closed captioning from that meeting, and just really quickly, reading, are there any questions or comments? Councilor Lehman, just again opposed to the use of the emergency clause. It doesn't seem necessary, but I'm not concerned about it for this. So you don't wish to make a motion? I don't. But you just, I just want to make a comment that it seems emergency clauses are thrown around. So, no, he did not make a motion.
Got it. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
So with that, I see a motion to pass the consent agenda as presented.
I move to pass the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you. And the second by Councilor Quasi. Excellent. Any further discussion? None. All in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye.
Aye.
And opposed? I note that Councilor Lehman did not vote in that one. He's not visible. But motion carries 6-0. So with that, we can move on to the next item on our agenda, which is the ordinance, the second reading of Ordinance 864. How about Mr. Brewer?
Thank you, Your Honor. This is an ordinance amending Philomath Municipal Code, Chapter 5.30, sale of tobacco products, and declaring an emergency.
Okay. So with that, we simply have a roll call vote, correct?
You can ask any discussion or any motions.
Okay. Any comments, questions, motions? Councilor Friday.
I'd like to make a motion to remove the emergency clause from
Okay.
Ordinance 864.
Got it. And do I have a second? Motion made by Councilor Andrade and looked like no second. So with that, motion fails, but we'll go ahead and do a second reading of the motion or of the ordinance. I'm sorry.
But we've done the second reading, so you can do the roll call vote.
Roll call vote. Thank you.
Well, back to Councilor Lehman.
Councilor Lehman's rejoined the meeting.
Yes.
There it is. Okay. David Lowe,
Aye.
Teresa Nielsen,
Yes.
Jessica Andrade,
Yes.
Catherine Bisco,
Yes.
Ruth Kazi,
Yes.
Matt Lehman,
Yes.
and Chaz Jones.
Yes. Excellent. Thank you for that. And next we have a resolution 2208 with the intent to establish an enterprise zone. And Chris, can you walk us through that?
Even better, we've invited Mr. Jerry Sorte from the Corvallis-Benton County Economic Development to join us. But I think Councilor Lowe is going to introduce this. This is coming out of the Finance and Admin Committee.
Oh, sorry about that, Councilor Lowe. Thank you.
Right, so at our last meeting, we were fairly busy, so this was an item that we had the pleasure of hearing from Mr. Sorte about the enterprise zone and how that could work for us in Philomath. And I don't need to see any more because we'll turn it over to Mr. Sorte.
Thank you very much. Good evening. My name is Jerry Sorte and I work for the Corvallis-Benton County Economic Development Office. We are a partnership between the city of Corvallis and Benton County. So in essence, here I'm working as your staff support, looking at potential creation of an enterprise zone here in Philomath. We jump into a quick PowerPoint presentation. And then of course, I'll be happy to answer any questions that I can at the end of this. Sure. All right. So the public policy question that is before the city council today is whether the city of Philomath should sponsor an enterprise zone, and if it decides that the answer is yes, whether to include hotel, motel, and resort businesses as eligible within the enterprise zone. So just broadly speaking, the enterprise zone is it's an option that's available under state law. Cities have to decide to opt into the enterprise zone. There are certain qualifications that need to be met in order to establish a zone. And the city needs to adopt a resolution, adopt a map, and then answer this question about whether it should include hotel, motel, resort businesses to be eligible. Broadly speaking, this is an incentive program that is designed to attract development within the zone and is required to create jobs in the process. It's one of the few monetary incentives that are available through state programs for this type of development. Gave a quick introduction to our office, and one of the nice things about working with a countywide office is that if we are approached by a business that may be looking to grow or establish themselves in the area, we can look across boundaries. We look at available industrial land primarily, sometimes commercial properties, but we're able to potentially direct people towards Philomath. Looking at the enterprise zone, again, this is a state program that has some local elements to it. The questions of which businesses are eligible and what types of investments are eligible are pulled from the state rules. The primary businesses that are eligible under enterprise zones are manufacturers, processors, shippers, call centers, and certain headquarter type facilities. So if you're producing a product, a widget, you're selling it to another business, we typically think of manufacturing, probably qualifies under the enterprise zone. Our office supports the Benton Corvallis Enterprise Zone, and our most recent applicants there have been some of the beverage manufacturing businesses that you've heard of, such as like Two Towns and Forest Spirits Distillery. The types of equipment and development that could potentially have this tax abatement, primarily looking at new buildings or structures, additions or modifications to existing buildings or structures, and installation of new machinery and equipment. So again, this is an incentive program. It's a tax abatement program where if you make certain developments, you don't have to pay taxes on those particular developments for a temporary period of time. It does not apply to retail, new retail development. And there's a couple of other uses that are specifically called out as ineligible. In order to establish an enterprise zone, the zone has to comply with certain economic factors. And one of those that can be used under the state rules looks at per capita income, and the area can be at 80% or below per capita income to qualify for the enterprise zone. So we have to show an economic hardship. If you use the city of Philomath in total, it does not qualify. So we've had to get a little bit more targeted and found that these shaded census block groups and tracts do qualify. So we have worked to create a enterprise zone map that pulls from that area. And we have that in front of you here. Really the intent of this map is to include area that is entirely located within the city of Philomath city limits, to include all of the industrial and commercially zoned property that's possible, because that's typically where you're going to see the types of development that would qualify under the enterprise zone. This map does include some residential areas. That's okay. It doesn't change the uses that are permitted in those areas. And typically there's not going to be like a manufacturing or other type of qualifying business that would be established in those residential areas. We worked on this map kind of to keep it as a contiguous block, as opposed to being kind of just scattered around areas that pulled in just the industrial grounds and the commercial areas. So if the city moves forward and establishes the enterprise zone, there would be this standard tax abatement that would apply to qualifying investment businesses. And this would be something that would be reviewed, and a decision would be made by the local zone manager in conjunction with the county assessor. It does require that the business that applies for this increase employment by at least one new job or 10% of employment, whichever is greater. There are other requirements under state law that would apply as well. A business, before it makes its investment, can apply to the city to have an extended tax abatement. This would be for potentially 4 or 5 years. It does require that the city council approve a written agreement with those businesses. They can make additional asks of those businesses, and the businesses have a higher bar that they've got to step over in terms of paying a higher wage. And these are again required by state law. And this is a little bit higher standard than the typical 3-year abatement. Again, if a business wanted to apply for 4 or 5 years, they would have to work with the city. We work with the assessor as well, and the city council would need to approve a written agreement and would know that this would be happening before anything was approved. Broadly speaking, development in the enterprise zone would funnel through the enterprise zone manager. We would work with the county assessor and have a pre-authorization conference with the business looking to utilize this program and help them understand the requirements. Standard abatement would be an administrative approval. This would be done by the zone manager and the county assessor. Extended abatement, as I mentioned, would come in front of the city council. So that's the enterprise zone at a high level. I'm happy to answer any questions that I can and turn it back over to Chris.
I have a question.
Yeah.
The enterprise zone manager, is that a city position or is that a county position? What is that exactly?
It can be, the city council can appoint the zone manager. Really the purpose of the zone manager is to advertise, to promote the program, to take in applications, work with businesses that are interested. Our office has acted as the zone manager for the Benton-Corvallis Enterprise Zone, which includes area around HP, the Corvallis Airport as well, and it's available in that capacity here. Alternatively, the city could appoint someone else as the zone manager, but that's really the main function of that position.
The recommendation would be for Benton County Economic Development to continue to do that. So it'd be the director there, Kate Portia, with Jerry supporting.
So in the proposal here, and we talked about the Finance Administration Committee too, but so we would need to determine whether to include the hotel, motel, resort businesses. What's the significance of that? Why would we say yes or no to that? What should we be considering on that?
I think it's one of the, it's just an option. It's an option that's available in the state rules. So if a new hotel was looking to establish itself here, If you say yes, and I believe the draft resolution includes hotel and motel businesses, then it could apply under the 3-year abatement. So it's just an opportunity to refine the program a little bit based on the community's objectives.
And does Corvallis currently, I mean, just as far as county, is that something that the hotel and motel and?
You might have got me on that one.
Okay.
I don't know. I would say it may not, just because of the locations of where our enterprise zones are located there are really focused towards hotels and motels, but I don't have that answer. I will say that I, in a previous position, worked with City of Sweet Home, and this was a standard thing that we included when I was at that place.
And Chris, judging from his comment, is our enterprise zone conducive to hotel, motel, and?
I'll have to look at our zoning map really quick, but it's on here. Let me just pull it up really quick and see. Some of it is what are the allowed uses in your light industrial, your industrial spaces. And I just don't remember off the top of my head if our
So it does include your downtown, a large portion of your downtown, which would include commercially zoned.
Yeah, so I
properties.
think anything there. Yeah, so we've got a number of commercial spaces, the downtown corridor, everything north of the highway. You know, there's been conversations as we've been looking to update the comp plan and maybe converting some of that to commercial land north of the highway. So yeah, anything within that, I'll just pull this up again, anything within that corridor, that orange area would be eligible, whether it was owned industrial or commercial. So including hotels, motels would allow them to have that break if they developed anywhere along the highway corridor, essentially, or the north side at the very least. So yeah, for you, C2. So the code, it looks like in the C1, the downtown core, they're not allowed, but in the C2 they would be. So anything outside that downtown core allows for
And there's
hotels.
a lot of C2 area in that enterprise zone. Is that what you're saying? Which I was.
Yeah, everything north of the highway and everything east of 12th Street and west of 10th Street. No, sorry, west of 12th Street and east of 14th Street. So right now the C1 is only from 12th to 14th currently. Are you looking at industrial uses?
Visco?
So just the overarching view of this program, you know, it sounds great, and let's encourage business development and job, you know, potential creating of jobs. Councilor Lehman alluded to this as well earlier, that we're proposing in this narrative not only to impact our special taxing districts, so our school districts, our fire district, any special service districts, also the city's tax incomes. We're also excluding our downtown corridor and our small retail businesses and those folks. So as I read this, you know, we're looking at scenarios that are only required to produce up to one additional job. I don't know which page it is on now. We got several pages here, but aren't we going two different directions by saying we're really encouraging big development to come in here and giving them tax incentives, and at the same time we're telling our downtown core businesses that, well, gosh, we want you to invest everything, but we're not going to give you that same kind of incentive. It seems like it's two different messages. And again, overarching, I'm not saying it's a bad idea that we encourage development of business, you know, but what's the risk here, and what's the cost, and what's the management or the oversight or administration of this particular enterprise zone compared to the management of, say, our downtown streetscapes project or our downtown Philomath revitalization plan. And I think we have very finite resources of which to balance here. And we should be considering all of them in this proposal before just jumping on board with something that sounds great because it might create jobs at what could be a very dear cost to our tax base and to those of us that will have to pick up the difference on those taxes.
Thank you, Kazi.
Yeah, I wanted to ask first, Mr. Sorde, is there a charge for having your department manage the enterprise zone?
I believe that there is a charge, like an application charge, it's like around $250. It's or thereabouts. It's less than $1,000. That's just kind of a standard fee that's charged. Our office would look, I believe that we are looking at if there is a 4th or 5th year abatement to have some sort of fee in there to defray some of our costs. It would be, I would anticipate, tied to like the time that's taken just to manage the program.
Okay. And I noticed in the document that outlines enterprise zones in Oregon, it refers to a sunset of the program on June 30, 2025. Is that when the program is expected to be renewed?
June 30 of 2025.
Yes.
I'm not familiar with that sunset timeline. I know that if this was established, it would last essentially for 10 years. However, the city council can choose to withdraw the enterprise zone. At that point, if that were to happen, I don't think the city can reapply for an additional 10 years past that. So I'm not familiar with the timeline to which you're referring.
Okay. And I would just like to respond to Councilor Bisco's point, because I view this as complementing what we're doing downtown rather than conflicting with it or detracting from it, because this program is really targeting particularly manufacturing businesses that could come into the area and would probably almost certainly not be downtown, but whose employees would be drawn downtown. So I would actually see it as complementing what we are doing with the Streetscapes project and the downtown revitalization. And certainly since we have an entity who's available to manage it, I don't think that constraint should be a concern.
Thank
Can I
you.
respond just for clarification?
Sure.
Okay, so my concern is not that we should discourage that type of business. My concern is that, say we have a multi-million-dollar firm wants to come in here and develop a building in some space, and we're going to just wipe away all of that tax revenue for the city. That is in fact the tax revenue that helps us build our infrastructure. It is the tax revenue that helps us provide administrative services. Where do we recapture that? Where do we recapture those taxes and that revenue? And likewise, it's a messaging thing. It's not a competition thing or an equivalent thing. How do we tell our downtown businesses that we're not in a position, or we don't have a program to offer you that same kind of incentive? Knowing what our budget constraints are when it comes to infrastructure in particular is where my concern is kind of lying. This feels very open-ended. Say we were to have a two-town cider come into town, that's a whole different thing when we talk about tax revenues versus our small businesses and how we do or do not support them.
Thank you. I would just say that if we have an enterprise zone and that business chooses to come in and build and establish a business here, that's tax revenue we wouldn't have had if they didn't come here. And it's not that we'll never have it. We'll have it within 3 years or 5 years, whichever is appropriate for that situation. So I think it gives us an advantage and at least puts us on equal footing with other communities. So I don't see that as really impacting our current tax revenue. And we can certainly create, as we discussed earlier, create incentives for other businesses that we want to come to our downtown area.
Thank you. I have a really quick clarifying question. What taxes are they? Is it just the city? Is it city and county? Does it include special districts?
Yeah, it includes all taxes for 3 years and then up to 4 or 5 years. And so like I've looking at the taxing rates in Philomath, in sum, those total kind of based on where you're at between 19 and about $22 per 1,000 of assessed value.
Okay, thank you. And Councilor Lowe.
Yeah, a couple of things. One thing that was disappointing is that the program, the state law does not allow for retail businesses. So that's kind of why we're locked out of the other. And I think it would be helpful for the city to maybe look at what can we do to encourage retail businesses, which primarily would be in the downtown area. But to Councillor Causey's point, I don't see it. I see it being complementary too, but I think we do need to have an emphasis on the retail, because there is that whole aspect we've just been talking about, the redevelopment of downtown, which is primarily retail. And Jerry, are there any statistics that say, okay, you're given the abatement and say it's 3 years or whatever to other businesses, at what point do we recoup those lost taxes over? I mean, is there like a 6-year period after you've gone through the 3 years, say that you recoup that money that you basically forgone for those 3 years? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't know that I have that information. I know that Business Oregon had studied the enterprise zone program and found that it does have a positive return, like it is a pretty significant investment. Again, I think, again, the concept is you give 3 to 5 years of tax abatement, and then you have hopefully taxable property that's on the books after the 3 to 5 years. I don't have the answer for when that return occurs, but I know that there is a Business Oregon report where they found that the program that does have a positive impact.
Okay. Thank you. And I'm going to get Councillor Andrade's question, and then I'm going to get a motion on the table, and then we can continue conversation. But Councillor Andrade.
Thank you. I have a couple questions. I may have missed this, but I guess the areas that we don't necessarily want to, have these larger expanded companies, that would be solved with rezoning, correct? And then can we shrink that area to the enterprise zone to exclude the downtown part and kind of focus more on those industrial areas?
Yeah, so part of the reason for the map as it's laid out, as Jerry mentioned, was to have it continuous rather than have little pockets. Philomath's not that big of an area. That's one reason. The other is just to simplify our application that we're submitting to the state, and how that all gets carved out. There's legal descriptions and the map itself and all that. So we, you don't want it so spotty that we're looking at a map trying to decipher, when somebody walks in the door, are you or are you not in the enterprise zone? Well, we got to pull out the magnifying glass and figure that out, right? So having it be more inclusive is a good thing, I would argue, but also simplifies it. The one thing I mentioned, Jared, would have been nice, I think, if we had the time to include our areas that are in the county but inside our urban growth boundary, right? So if a property inside their growth boundary annexes, they're already there and set to go. That would require going to Benton County, getting the county to pass a resolution, be a co-applicant, and it just it complicates our application. So the concept was to limit it to inside city limits. And then if a business wants to annex into the city and put a new building there, they annex into the city, and then we'll just apply to the state to just expand out our map to include that new area that's now within city limits. And so that would just be one more step that we do for an annexation for industrial or commercial property for a business that comes in. So we're trying to keep the process simple. We're trying not to get more government entities and government bodies involved in what needs to be. No offense to Benton County, but just having more partners in there, more hands in making the pizza just kind of gets it messy sometimes. So mostly the map is about, it's constrained by how much the median household income is. And so that limits some of the areas like up on the hillsides on either end of town. We want to find something that we can justify. We didn't just artificially carve it out, right? So we're using these census tracts, or they're not census tracts, they're tax tracks, right?
They're
So,
block groups in the census.
right, block grants in the census. So, that's not artificial. Those are there. And then it's inside city limits. And that really gives us a very simple map that we can justify and that the state's not going to raise an eyebrow at, right? It's going to be very justifiable and easy to go forward. Again, a large scale development isn't going to locate in downtown Philomath because of the enterprise zone. Our land use laws and regulations are going to keep them out of that downtown area, right? They're only going to habitate in those larger industrial lands where we want them to be anyway.
Thank you for clarifying.
Sure.
My next question is, I know the Planning Commission is supposed to be going over the comp plan updates with the economic opportunity analysis policies and strategies that Eco Northwest had generated for us. And I guess it feels odd to be discussing this in depth to potentially make this decision now when we haven't received those recommendations from the Planning Commission yet. And I was wondering if there's a reason as to why it sounds like we're supposed to be making a decision tonight when we haven't had the results of those discussions yet.
I can tell you that one of the recommended policies already approved by the Planning Commission is to include incentives for new development that focuses on new job creation, such as, I think they specifically name enterprise zones and other tax incentives. So at least in the draft version of those new policies, it's in there. The city council's got to approve that still. But this is already well on its way. And it is identified in the city council strategic plan as a pursuit as well. And that's been in there for at least the last 2 years, is to pursue or consider approval and adoption of an enterprise zone. So I think we're covered there. I'm not too worried about the timing. To me, it's more a matter of having Benton County, Corvallis, Benton County Economic Development at the table and willing to take this on. We've done some preliminary work with the state already. We've held the meeting at the Finance Committee. Last Friday, we held a meeting with all of the taxing jurisdictions, all the taxing districts, to be able to come and provide comment. Didn't receive any negative comment. We just had one taxing district that even showed up and provided any comment at all. That was a school district. They didn't have any concerns. So I feel like we've started down the road. And again, to me, these are all good things. This is something we should have done 10 years ago. And there were reasons 10 years ago to not do it. I just don't think any of those reasons are alive or well today. And so I strongly support establishing the enterprise zone and helping our businesses out. I will say, and I mentioned this in the Finance Committee, the one negative you're looking at is money left on the table, right? If you've got a business that's already going to come to Philomath, whether you lure them here with an enterprise zone or not, they were already going to come here. They were already going to come. They were already going to pay those 3 years worth of taxes. And we've now just given that to them, said, oh, you don't have to pay taxes the first 3 years. You could see that as being wasteful or leaving money on the table. However, I would argue that if that new business is coming to Philomath and they get 3 years without having to pay property taxes on that investment they've made, all the better, because my experience is that money doesn't go into the pockets. That money goes into investment into that business, and they're going to be able to hire people sooner. They're going to be able to redevelop sooner. They're going to be able to grow their business that much quicker. And so even for a business that was already slated to come to Philomath, we're still giving them a minimum 3-year incentive to continue to get established and to grow their business here in town, which I have a hard time seeing the negative downside on, especially when you talk about, Philomath's tax rate is the, $5 per 1,000. So you're talking a $200,000 investment. The money that we're going to go without for that year is really pretty nominal in the grand scheme of things.
So then, do we have our zoning? I guess I know that the Eco Northwest has suggested that we change certain zoning areas to make it more economically favorable for the city. Do we have our zoning figured out already so that it could, this enterprise zone could be, I don't know, working at its optimal level?
I don't recall any of the recommendations from Eco Northwest that would convert like residential land into industrial or commercial land.
Okay.
I think the only thing that we've seen would be upzoning existing residential to like higher density residential, or potentially some of the light industrial spaces to commercial or industrial to commercial. But I've not seen where something that's not on this proposed map would in the future be part of this map. So I don't think so. I think our current zoning is going to be okay, even if it converts from industrial to commercial. It's still going to be covered inside the enterprise zone as it's been presented.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. With that, I'm going to go ahead and get a motion on the table. So I'm going to move to approve resolution 2208, intent to establish an enterprise zone and direct staff to work with Corvallis, Benton County Economic Development in applying to the state.
Second.
Go ahead. I made the motion, seconded by Councilor Lowe. So further discussion. Councilor Cosby.
Yes, I'd just like to advocate the inclusion of hotel, motel, resort businesses, just because it's something that we don't have a lot of in town. I think we could use more places for people to stay.
TLT tax.
Now, is that an amendment to the motion or? we have to do that?
It's included in the language now, so we just need clarity on the continue to include it or to withhold it. Jim was just mentioning to me that maybe one of the reasons we don't have a lot of hotel motels is because we're pretty restrictive in our code on where they're allowed to go. They're only allowed in the C2 zone. They're not allowed in light industrial. They're not allowed in C1. They're not allowed in other than C2, and our C2 is the dark blue on the map that I'm referencing here up on the wall. And so we've kind of really limited where to go, and we don't even address motels. That's only for hotels. There's nothing to motels. Or sorry, only to motels. It's not to hotels in any way. So there is no place that we can put a hotel currently.
So this might spur that conversation too, and particularly the transient room taxes. That might be a place where you could get a little bit of tax that would offset some of the lost property tax. So,
and the hotel motel is a little different. I think, you know, policy wise, not to supersede the state, I think policy wise, if this is really geared towards traded sector jobs and building that, I mean, a hotel motel isn't really that, right? But I think what the state saw and what I would argue cities that approve hotel motels to be included in this is that there are some regional economic benefits of having a hotel or motel in your community. And those are probably superseded because it's not really retail. It's not really a service you're providing or something you're selling. It's a lodging, which is different, but I think you'd have a hard time arguing that having a hotel or motel in town is a bad thing for the economy, right? It tends to be seen as a positive. And so, you know, my guess would be that's where they were included as well, because they're not retailer services, they're not manufacturing, but you know, to be able to lure a hotel or motel into town because they know they can get this added bonus, I think is helpful. And I do want to say, and I said this at the Finance Admin Committee, so apologies there, but if the reason that a business is going to come to Philomath over another business is only because we have this 3-year tax incentive, and that's going to make or break their business. If we don't have that 3%, they just can't make payroll. But if we give this first 3 years and they'll be able to make it, that's not a business I'm that excited about coming and investing in Philomath, right? I mean, if they're that tight on the shoestring on what they can make, what they can't make, and you know, maybe we're not that interested in landing that business, right? And so it can't be the only decision to get them there. But my experience has been, we don't even come into consideration with other communities, because one of the first questions that they ask is, does your community provide financial incentives for new businesses coming to town? And when they survey our region, a bunch of other communities say, yep. we have enterprise zone, we have an enterprise zone, we have an enterprise zone, and we say, nope, we don't even make the cut, the first cut. They don't even look at us because why would they? Everybody else gets incentive, gives incentive, so we don't. So to me, the enterprise zone is much more about, let's bring us up to an even playing field with our neighboring communities so that we at least get looked at in the same breath that they're getting looked at before they decide to just cross us off the list. So doing an enterprise zone, again, I don't think it's a big financial lift for us. Jerry provided the finance admin committee with the annual, in fact, I think it's in here, the annual statement, so you can look at what kind of dollar amounts that City of Corvallis is giving up each year for the next couple of years. It's not a big heavy lift, especially for a community the size of Philomath on what we would anticipate getting, but it is enough to get us at least on that list where we could say that we are being proactive. I think it tells our citizens and our business owners that we are actively pursuing businesses to grow in Philomath and to expand in Philomath and to come to Philomath. It's putting the welcome sign out. And right now, I smile as big as I can smile, and we're as helpful and friendly as we can be when they get here. But having that enterprise zone, I think, kind of gets them in the door sometimes, when otherwise we don't get considered.
Thank you. Councilor Lehman.
Yeah, are there any out-of-pocket costs for generating this enterprise zone?
There's a application fee that Jerry spoke to, a few $100s. Some of my time to get an agreement put together and get an application submitted. But Jerry's offered to help with that process as well. So it'd be pretty minimal. Some staff time and promoting it. We'll get it out on social media and on the establish a website and get all that going. So there'll be some staff time involved.
Thanks.
Councilor Lowe. You have your.
Yeah, I just was going to follow up with city manager about your experience. So when businesses approach the city about development or so on, is that one of the questions? Do you guys give a tax break if we come here?
That's what incentives the city offers. Yes, absolutely. They ask.
Yeah.
Usually they're looking for some type of help with infrastructure. Do we waive SDCs? Can we waive permit fees? The answer to both of those is no. We don't have a program for waiving fees. We don't have a program for, we can't waive the permitting fees, right? We have contractual obligations to pay our inspectors for that. We don't want to waive our SDCs. That affects infrastructure, right? This isn't waiving infrastructure costs. This is really just foregoing new tax money that comes into the general fund. So it is police, right? That's half of the budget. It's police services, administrative services, those types of things, our parks. So that's what's going to go without that additional revenue for those first 3 years. That's where you're going to see it. Yeah.
And council really wouldn't have a say in that unless they were applying for the extended abatement, right?
Correct.
You did it.
And Councilor Bisco.
So again, not coming from a position of not supporting this economic opportunity, I do think it's important that we at least keep in mind any offsets that we give here may preclude us from giving offsets for affordable housing, for example, or offsets to, or some sort of incentives for downtown development in a community that does have finite resources when it comes to capacity, resources, water, whichever version of, we all have them, we all have limits. Do we want to see our investments go this way, or would we, there's how much traffic can we handle? That's a conversation we come against regularly as to the traffic burdens that exist in this area around us. We have not even experienced the traffic increase we'll see with the RV park. Do we want to see our traffic and our services and our revenue resourcing going towards large developments like this? Or would we rather see a community develop in that downtown space that we were just talking about tonight, to where we start incentivizing and building those small businesses that also create jobs in our community, that build that place that people want to come? I guess I feel like it's a different message, and I feel like we're getting a mixed message here, and there are finite resources, both administratively, city-wise, traffic, infrastructure, offsets, all of those things. This almost feels premature, like horse before the, cart before the horse, coming right off the conversation we had earlier. I'm not saying it's a bad idea, but is today the right time for this, for the city of Philomath? I guess is maybe my question. And I have some reservations. I don't know that we have enough information here to holistically look at. Let's start doing big commercial developments when we don't even have our town square figured out, or our city lot figured out, or all the Brownsfield areas that we have figured out. We don't have any of that resolved, including transportation, including housing, including our budget and our own infrastructure as it exists right now.
Thank you. And I'll just add that when I think of having more jobs in Philomath, whether they be industrial, light industrial, commercial manufacturing, I think of it as reducing traffic because people aren't having to go for longer distances for those jobs. So if they're having to drive to Corvallis, that increases the traffic on that. Whereas if just driving locally, that is a benefit. I also think that knowing that we haven't had these types of business incentives in the past, and that tells me a story because we're looking to promote businesses and economic opportunity in Philomath these days. And why is that? Is it because we haven't been encouraging businesses to come? Like, why have we been struggling with that aspect of our economic development? And I don't know the answer, but it seems like there's a logical conclusion that maybe if we were doing these sorts of things, we wouldn't find ourselves looking for economic opportunities now. So that's one of the reasons I'm in support of this idea. Just want to see us start to support more local businesses, whether they can still be manufactured. They don't have to be large businesses here. I mean, it only requires a single job, so just a certain type of business, which isn't necessarily large. But anyhow, that's just my thoughts. And I saw that Councilor Andrade has her hand up.
Thank you. Councilor Bisco, excellent points. I really appreciate you bringing that up of, yes, this sounds like a great opportunity, and yet perhaps do we want to do this now? I, especially considering the fact that we've just implemented the TLT and everything, the TLT policy, and how to, distribute tourism funds to organizations. I think it's important that we kind of see how investing in these tourism businesses, or investing in tourism, will help to improve our economy in the city and such. But the main thing I was curious about was the RV parks. Would that count under hotel, motel, resort businesses? Because I know that we did involve them in the TLT policy itself and kind of treated them as like a room. And so how does that potentially play a role with the RV policy that we approved a while back?
Chris?
I don't know if it's related to the TLT tab. They're going to be, that's collected from the person that stays overnight. That's who's paying that. I'm not sure on the enterprise zone if an RV park qualifies as a hotel, motel, or destination resort. I kind of think because it's not listed specifically that it's not, but I'd want to confirm that with the state on whether it would qualify or not. I think RV resort areas or RV destinations are a big enough component in tourism and economic development and things that I would think it would list it out separate. So, I mean, if I had to guess, I would say it's not included, but I'd need to confirm that.
Okay. Yeah, just because the language in the policy itself kind of equates the two. And so if it equates it there, does it here? But yeah, basically we have so many new things going on in the city right now, so many new policies and projects that we want to do. I agree that it feels like we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves, and maybe we should wait a little bit until we've seen more growth with our smaller businesses and, have started to do the streetscapes projects and such.
Thank you. Councilor Colley.
I raised a question concerning the RV park in the Finance and Administration Committee meeting because I wondered if they would actually be grandfathered into this since it's a new project underway. And the answer is no, that you can't have started the project before the enterprise zone was approved. Now, if it was a phased project, as I understand it, there could be certain later phases that might qualify.
I was specifically talking about new RV parks. If we were to have, I don't know if our policy on RV parks would interfere, I guess, with whatever the enterprise zone rules are, on top of whether or not they would apply for the hotel, motel, resort businesses.
And Councilor Nielsen.
From my perspective and what I've heard this evening, I feel that this enterprise zone is more complementary than conflicting with what we hope to do for our town. I think when we look at the overall big picture, that progress in seeing that big picture is not necessarily a negative thing. I think we can go forward with confidence that we can meet the needs of our small businesses and our downtown businesses, as well as have an enterprise zone. It's not one or the other. I think they are complementary. I think our goals of providing businesses and workplaces locally that people can access via bike or pedestrians. What is bad about providing employment here in our town? I think that's a positive thing. And a tax base, yes, there's a temporary minimalization as they come into town, but if they establish their business, we have years ahead. I mean, years and years. Businesses don't usually come in 1 to 3 years and they're gone. Hopefully these are businesses that will stay indefinitely and provide a substantial benefit to our city and our population. And so I absolutely think that this could be a really good thing for us. And the sizes of businesses that it will attract doesn't necessarily mean it will be monumental, large companies as in what would be in Salem or other places, but just to give a hand up to those businesses that are interested in forming in towns like Philomath and the communities like what we have here. I think it's a positive thing.
Yeah, I just add to that. I think we look at the streetscape project is primarily geared at 14th to 7th Street, downtown corridor. I mean, Urban Renewal Agency is putting in $6 million. The city streets is putting in $1 million. There's a lot of money is being invested. You could argue if you were outside of that corridor, you'd say, how come the city's putting $7-8 million into the streetscape project, it's going to improve downtown, but you're not providing any incentives for businesses that are outside of that corridor, right? So, if we're talking about comparison and supporting businesses of all types, there's an argument to be made to, do something to help those businesses that aren't able to locate in the downtown corridor.
I'm going to go ahead and take the 2 more questions, one from Councilor Andrade, then Bisco, and then call the question after that. Councilor Andrade.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that I'm not against encouraging businesses to come here. And I'm not saying it should be an either or of do we or don't we have an enterprise zone versus like investing in our smaller businesses. I'm agreeing with what Councilor Bisco said, which is maybe we should be focusing more on the smaller businesses and the people who are already here and slowly also begin to start investing in, recruiting these larger businesses to Philomath. And just the whole point about the finite resources. Like, we are spending so much money on these large projects. I think it's the more fiscally responsible to kind of like see how that plays out, and with taking care of our own before being able to, you know, like I said, invest in being able to invest more in recruiting other companies.
Thank you.
Businesses.
Go.
I'm fine, thank you.
With that, all in favor of passing the motion as stated, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 All opposed, please raise your hand and say nay. Any any abstentions? Councilor Bisco, I didn't see how you voted.
Raise my hand as aye.
Okay, thank you. And so motion carries 5-2. So with that,
Clarify.
5-2.
Those were.
Yeah.
sorry, what?
I saw a no from Councilor Andrade, but I didn't see a second no.
Yeah.
Layman also voted no. Correct, Councilor
Okay.
Layman?
No, I voted yes.
No, you voted
Oh.
yes.
Oh, I apologize. My video may have been laggy. So then it was 6-1, is that correct? Okay,
That's what
I
I had,
apologize. Sorry about that. With that, we have opportunity for staff reports and council reports. Chris, do you want to offer any report?
Yeah. First, thank you, Jerry, for being with us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Help with that. I know we're getting kind of late and I want to hear from the council. So the other thing would be, we've got a meeting coming up here next week with REAL, which is the Rural Economic Alliance. We did find out that we did not
Point
receive.
of order. I believe we had tabled the previous discussion about the minutes and whatnot, because there was some question about whether we still have the emergency clause in the resolution. We were going to come back to that after our break, and we haven't, and I didn't want to lose that in the staff reports and the winding down.
Councilor Lehman, we actually did address that. You hadn't come back.
Oh, okay. That's what, okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And we did clarify that that motion was never made.
Okay. Thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you. So, oh, sorry, Chris.
I just mentioned, so the Rural Economic Alliance is going to meet next week. We did find out we did not get the rare intern that we had applied for that was going to help lead us in the kind of an update of the strategic plan for that group. A lot of the strategic plan that was developed 4 years ago has been completed. We talked about, gave you the update last time on the website that's been created, the new branding that's been done, but we're in the kind of toolbox put together. So we've kind of completed a lot of those initial strategic plan items, and we're looking to update that. We were hoping the rare intern would be able to facilitate that discussion, and that's not happened. And so at this meeting here next week, we'll be talking about whether we want to pool funds in addition to what we've been paying annually. If we want to pool additional funds to bring a consultant and do that. If we want to try to do it internally, part of that discussion revolves around discussions we've had with the council before about having additional representation from the different jurisdictions, from elected officials or other practitioners in the area. So individuals other than just the city administrators and city managers. That's going to be part of that strategic plan conversation. So if you have any comments or thoughts or want to talk to me about that between now and my meeting next week, just give me a call or stop in. We can talk through those. I'm happy to get any individual insights that you've got. Don't necessarily need a decision from the body tonight. It's pretty preliminary. We did hear from, I guess, just big picture, a couple of things. We did hear from FEMA on a couple of housing issues. Some of the homes on the north side of Timothy came back on our elevations were not sufficient. And so we're going to be working with those property owners on bringing their crawl spaces up. Sometimes as little as like 1 inch to 2 inches in order to meet the requirements for FEMA. We also got a pretty nice audit of our code language surrounding floodplain. Pat Depp, our planner, spent some time with their representative this morning and is looking at some code change language. So that'll be coming to the city planning commission and then up to the city council for changes to the development code specific to FEMA floodplain issues. So just know that that's coming your way. That's work that's underway currently. On the Mill Pond Crossing situation, a quick update. I know that some additional construction fencing got put in place to protect pedestrians from some of the construction areas, specifically the ditch areas. Some additional signage was added for no trespassing to try to dissuade specifically youth from going into that construction site area where it's not very safe. So they've taken some steps there to try to prevent that. I did hear that sounded like this next round of funding that Mr. Miller was looking for was able to go through. He had to work with DEQ to get some liens and other things removed off the property in order to get that, but it looks like he's come to a new agreement with DEQ and they're looking for a new loan that's going to help pay for this next round of phase 2 improvements and developments. So a lot of those things that are hanging out there with phase 1 and phase 2, mostly phase 2, looks like there's some fresh money to help take care of and resolve a lot of those issues. So looking for progress soon on those. We did receive the last of the lot line adjustments that we needed in. And so again, the city planner, I think we're just waiting on a final payment of those application fees. And then the city planner has all those decisions pre-written and ready to go. We just need to process those and we'll get all those lot line adjustments corrected, which has been a big project, both for the developer and for staff to get all that fixed. So we're seeing progress on Mill Pond Crossing, which is good. Always would like things to go quicker there, but I am seeing progress. So we are still waiting on a date from Benton County on when they can start connecting the open ditch to cross underneath Chapel Drive. That line needs to be continued before we can fill in the ditch on the north side of Timothy, which is the only way for water to flow down and through the property currently. So this is somewhat weather dependent. Benton County obviously doesn't want them in there making a muddy mess while the ground is still saturated. So we're just waiting for it to stop raining and for things to dry out before Benton County will issue them a construction permit for the work that needs to be done on Chapel and to get underneath Chapel with those storm lines. So kind of waiting, sitting tight, anxiously waiting for the weather to clear up a little bit so we can do some more construction out there. I think I'll limit it to that. Again, I know we're getting late, but I have to answer any questions. So, Councilor,
Yeah, when you mentioned that they put up no trespassing signs and so on, what street is that?
I know they put the construction fencing on Willow, and they were told to put the no trespassing signs up at any of the stub streets, so anywhere the asphalt kind of ends. And they're supposed to put some along Chapel Drive as well. I've not confirmed that those are there. I was told that they were getting done.
Well, I went by there today and 16th Street has nothing.
16th?
There's been no postings at all, and that's where a lot of the concern has been, that kids go across the street and they get into a couple of foundation areas that have debris there. There's nothing to tell anybody that not to go over there.
Okay.
And there's no barrier. You had the orange stuff in Timothy North, like you said, but there's nothing
On
in
16th.
16th.
Okay, I can address that with Levi tomorrow.
That'd be a good thing.
I will say I've driven down 16th Street and seen the kids playing there, and I've looked out, and then there's parents right across the street in the yards like it's nothing. And so I think it makes it hard when some parents are okay with their kids over there playing and other parents aren't okay with their kids playing over there. I think whether you have a no trespassing sign up or not, if the parents don't care that the kids are over there, it's gonna be problematic. And I can tell you,
Well,
the developer's preference would be that nobody be on the site at all, but he needs to put some signage up, so I'll work with him tomorrow.
okay, but I wouldn't say that parents are unconcerned. I think parents are very concerned about their kids going in there.
Thank you. So with that, any council members? Or colleagues?
As a liaison to the Frolic and Rodeo, I would just wanted to let everyone know that the Frolic and Rodeo is well underway and in the hopefully the final planning stages. But if anyone is interested in volunteering, you just need to go to their website, and there are lots of different opportunities to do things. If you've never gone to the Frolic and Rodeo or volunteered, it's a great opportunity to get to know the people who put this on and what a tremendous thing it is for the community. And it's a lot of fun too.
Cool.
Thank you. And Councilor Lehman?
Yeah, a couple things. First, from the PYC, the youth center, what we used to call the clubhouse, the attendance is down slightly from pre-pandemic times, but the childcare elements that the PYC provides are all full. The PYC is looking for middle school or older kids to volunteer for Safety Town in August. So if you know anyone who'd be interested in doing that, reach out to the PYC. And also they did receive some funding through the grant application process to increase staffing and get some skills trainers on board, which is going to be very helpful for the kids that are participating in the clubhouse and the childcare situation there. And then on another note, on the General Government Committee from the LOC, there was a lot of concern expressed about Measure 110, which was the basically the decriminalization of controlled substances bill that was, or measure that was passed during the last election, and which diverted a sizable portion of the marijuana tax revenues to programs for putting people into rehab and consultative services. And it has proven out over the course of the time since that law has been enacted that very small percentage, like 1% or less than 1% of the people that have been cited under the new law have actually reached out for any kind of counseling or anything like that. So there's going to be a push from, at least from the LOC side of things, to see about revising some of that legislation around Measure 110, since it doesn't seem to be an effective use of the tax dollars in the way in which it was directed, and may result in us getting some of that revenue back to spend in the local area.
Thank
That's
you. Councilor Lowe?
Yeah, and then just report that the town hall on wildfires, fire safety is well underway. It's scheduled for June 23rd, Thursday evening from 7 to 8:30. Thanks to city staff for getting out a lot of information very quickly. Been broadcasting to many different groups about this town hall being happening. It's going to be very interesting. We have, I think, 7 panelists really that will be discussing various aspects of this, from Department of Forestry, OSU Extension Service Forestry, Benton County, and our local fire district, as well as our assistant manager, Chelsea Sarner, who has some experience with fire issues, fire prevention, so on. So looking forward to that. Hopefully we'll have a good turnout. Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's at Philomath High School. It's going to be the auditorium there. We've been able to work with the school district, so it's very helpful.
Excellent, thank you. thank you for working with the fire district, school district, and all those community partners to make that happen. I really do appreciate your initiative on that. Councilor Andretti.
Question for Councilor Lowe. And if people are unable to go to the town hall, we can view it online, correct?
Yes, thank you. Great. Thank you for bringing that up. Right. Chris is making sure that we can do it, have the video YouTubing, so it's live and it'll be recorded. So yes, thank you.
And Councilor Bisco, you have an update or report? No? Councilor Nielsen?
I just wanted to celebrate with the Philomath Academy. They had their very first graduation last Friday, and it was spectacular. And that was so exciting to see and to be a part of. And the lives that the Philomath Academy is touching are substantial and has great value in our town. And I'm just so happy to be a part of that and to have that be a part of our school district. We should really applaud all those who have made this so successful. And congratulations to those graduates.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that. And then lastly, just wanted to report back on the Memorial Day event. Many of you were there, and the block party downtown. It was a great success on all fronts, as far as I could tell. Everybody had a great time. I was super excited to see the turnout that we had. I had many requests to make it a recurring annual event. But I wanted to thank a number of the city councilors for coming and participating in Memorial Day recognition. That was emotional and hard, but it was wonderful to take part in. So thank you, Councilors Nielsen, Bisco, Lowe, and Lehman. That was really great. Also, really wanted to recognize Councilor Nielsen in being able to bring in the food trucks. So, that was huge for me. I get out of capacity and really appreciate bringing them. That was a good need. And I also want to thank Chris and his family and the Frolic and Rodeo. They did a lot to help with the final logistics, putting the tent up and down. That was getting rid of the trash and helping with the trash bins. But the Frolic was a great partner as well. And then with the Lyrica, really appreciated their sponsorship. And then in the end, if anyone wants to help plan an event next year, I encourage you to reach out to me. I'd like to start a committee for that. That would mean that we could actually reach out to sponsors in the fall and try to get a financial or try to get some folks to help out with the finances. And I would really appreciate it. So anyway, it was great. Appreciate everybody's success on that event. And I look forward to chatting with you on that. But with that, we will adjourn this meeting.
I have a question.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
So was this a council event? Because it sounds like everyone was involved except me.
I think the former mayor Neiman had reached out to the council to see if they wanted to participate in the reading, but it was not a council event.
Oh, so this wasn't your event either then, or was it?
Yes, I organized the event. My wife and I. But
which is why former Mayor Neiman reached out to people.
I asked him to take the lead on the Memorial Day recognition aspect of the event.
Okay, cool.
It was an effort by a lot of different partners to help it all come together.
Cool. Well, I'm glad you had so many volunteers.
And Chris?
I'll get in trouble with the Frolic if I don't mention this Friday at the rodeo grounds. From 6 to 10 o'clock, the Frolic's kind of kicking off the Frolic season. It'll be our events called something hour. What was it called? Golden Hour. Thank you. The Golden Hour. It's a community party, 6 to 10 o'clock, 21 and older, because there will be adult beverages served. There'll be food. There'll be dance lessons from 6 to 7 o'clock if you want to learn to two-step or swing or do some line dancing. We'll have a DJ there to take requests the rest of the evening. Food carts, some cornhole. We're kind of kicking off. It is a tropical paradise theme. So find your favorite floral shirt or hula skirt and just come have a good time. I think we're just doing a $5 cover charge at the door. But come celebrate. We're just excited to get together with the community. Chaz Jones, the mayor, inspired us with his event on Memorial Day. People just want to get out, see their neighbors, have a good time. So Frog's putting on a little pre-party just to get everybody in the spirit.
That's this Friday?
This Friday, the 17th, 6 to 10 o'clock at the rodeo grounds in the Uwood Corral Beer Garden. Bring a lei or a floral design shirt.
Hawaiian shirt.
Umbrella.
Umbrella, yeah.
Thank you, everyone. With that, we'll adjourn the meeting. See you soon.